What happened to Paige VanZant? Is she still a young fighter with untapped potential, or is she just a mediocre fighter that got into the UFC off of pure hype? Today, I want to explain how Paige VanZant managed to fail to live up to expectations and what she should be doing if she still wants a career in MMA. Her main problems lay with her incongruent style, her inability to decide whether she's a fighter or a model, and our inability to tell how good at MMA she can actually be. And yes, I know she's a boxer now, but this analysis will mainly look at her skill set as it pertains to MMA, because that's the only sport where she's ever met with any success. I'll be going over what her fighting style is, how that style is fundamentally flawed, how she can fix it, and how inconsistent priorities are ruining her potential. First, let's look at her fighting style. VanZant's original style involved clinching up and pushing her opponents against the fence using her natural strength and aggression. She then threw punches and knees while spamming unreliable judo throws in an attempt to get the fight to the ground. Once on the ground, she has an unpolished but relatively effective submission game. She's always been a lackluster boxer, but over the years she's managed to incorporate kicks into her fighting style. While her kicks are not as crisp as some other fighters, they have proven themselves to be reasonably effective, and kicking from the outside began to replace her clinching strategy after her fight with Namajunas. She began using her grappling more reactively as a response to people taking her down. Currently, she has the ability to kick, clinch, and grapple. She's not necessarily exceptional in any of these categories, but in MMA, you don't always have to be. Defensively, she's extremely tough and scrappy, and uses that natural grit to survive situations that would spell doom for most other fighters. Her defense is neither elegant nor especially skillful, but her grit allows her to take damage long enough to get back on the offensive. In short, VanZant has a lot of raw physical ability even if she lacks the polished skills, and this is why she was once considered such a promising prospect. So what's the problem? Why is someone with so much natural ability just fizzling out? Couldn't she just improve her skill set and do better? Well, the problem is not actually her ability, it's her strategy and metagame. To understand this, we first have to understand the ranges at which MMA is fought. And keep in mind that even in her later career, submissions were still VanZant's most reliable way to win a fight, and her strategy should account for that. As fighters move towards each other, they go through kicking range, boxing range, and then a clinch. Then the fighters have the option of initiating a takedown and then grappling. That is the most obvious game plan for someone that wants a submission. Kicking range, boxing range, clinch, takedown, grapple, submission. Those steps are not hard and fast rules, but they're a good general guideline that we can use to understand VanZant's game. Here's the big problem. While she has ranges where she can do well, she has no way to move between them. She can kick, but it's hard for her to get to a clinch because she's bad at boxing range. She can clinch, but she can't initiate grappling because she can't get a takedown. Judo throws work well when they're chained with other things, but they're not very reliable when they're all you have.
Really, it's poor technique by Paige VanZant on some of these takedowns. They're flawed.
If VanZant finds herself in a losing situation, she has no way to transition to one of her other skill sets. To understand how skill sets should link together, look at someone like Khabib Nurmagomedov. He closes distance into a clinch and then uses a system of takedowns to put you on the ground and initiate a devastating grappling game. His clinches cause takedowns, which cause grappling, which causes a submission. He isn't nearly as good in the striking department, but the skills he does have link together in a way that forms a cohesive game plan. If any of the links in the chain were missing, his strategy wouldn't work. Obviously, VanZant is no Khabib, but you still get the point of being able to link skill sets together. VanZant's skills are all on their own separate islands, and she is without a boat. And it's clear that VanZant isn't even aware of this problem because when she first started fighting, she had clinches and submissions. She could have invested her skill points in takedowns, which could have linked her clinches and grappling together. Or she could have at least invested in boxing, which could have linked her clinches to striking. Instead, she spent time developing kicks, which is the only fighting range that doesn't link to the rest of her game at all. It was one of the least efficient ways she could have spent her training time. Granted, her kicks have been useful on occasion, but being able to force a superior position probably would have worked just as well, if not better. Now, assuming she wants to continue her MMA career at some point, what should she be working on? That's actually a surprisingly easy answer. It's wrestling. for several reasons. Number one, the takedowns would link her clinch game to her grappling game, and would make her more effective in the stand-up if she were at least able to threaten a takedown. Number two, she has all of the prerequisite physical abilities. She's strong, she's tough, she's got good hips, and she's got as much grit and pain tolerance as anyone. She's shown the ability to physically bully people in the clinch, but hasn't built up the skills necessary to use takedowns. Number three, wrestling is a skill set that women's MMA is largely unprepared for. Obviously, there are women in MMA who can wrestle, but men's MMA is bursting at the seams with wrestlers. Every male fighter has trained extensively on how to counter wrestlers, and wrestling still works. In women's MMA, elite wrestlers are far less common. And if you know anything about wrestling, you can see that the skill gap between men and women is much wider in wrestling than things like striking or jiu-jitsu. VanZant's natural abilities combined with the relatively lower level of wrestling in women's MMA could make her an immediate threat. She doesn't even have to be good at wrestling. If she could at least threaten to drop to a double leg while in the clinch, she could get away with a lot more. And the ability to shoot for the legs could give her a weapon to use when she's losing the striking battle. Her judo throws require her to already be in a clinch, which means anyone striking her doesn't ever have to worry about being taken down. She doesn't have to be a great wrestler to use it effectively, but she could be great at it. She was even able to repeatedly wrestle her way to the feet with Rose Namajunas on top of her. And that was pure natural talent, not technique. If she actually builds up some wrestling technique on top of that talent, the sky's the limit. But instead of learning to wrestle, she left women's MMA altogether and started bare-knuckle boxing. Which leads me to the matter of Paige VanZant's inconsistent priorities. Namely, whether she's a fighter that does some modeling or whether she's a model that does some fighting. Sometimes when fighters hit a roadblock, they go up a weight class so they can gain some muscle or have an easier cut. Paige VanZant went up a weight class because she got breast and butt implants. She didn't gain muscle or keep water weight. She got to carry around a bunch of silicone while suddenly fighting girls that are 10 pounds heavier. Not long after that, she fought out her contract and jumped over to bare-knuckle boxing. And that's especially weird because she's terrible at boxing and is currently 0-2 in the promotion. VanZant had already beaten one of those opponents, Rachel Ostovich, in MMA. Ostovich was winning the striking match, but VanZant's grappling managed to save her. Why VanZant was the favorite going into their boxing match, I'll never know. Now, these decisions would kind of make sense if VanZant was prioritizing her Instagram career over her fighting career and doesn't really care whether she wins or loses fights. But she's actually stated in interviews that she considers herself a fighter first and foremost. But having to fight bigger people because you got cosmetic surgery and then promptly jumping to a different sport suggests that's not the case. And if she is prioritizing her modeling career, which is where she makes most of her money, then why is she fighting at all? The risk of bruising, injuries, and accumulated scar tissue hangs over her Instagram career like a guillotine with a fraying rope, especially when she's signed with a promotion that has a rule set known for lacerating people's faces. That's her moneymaker. Well, one of them. I know that BKFC is paying her an obscene amount of money, but if she needs money, it would be smarter to fully pursue her modeling career. It's already where most of her money comes from, and nobody is forced to retire from modeling because of accumulated brain trauma. Or if she needs even more money, just do porn. If you've seen her online content, you'd know she's already this close. Essentially, VanZant is caught between her MMA and Instagram careers, and moving to BKFC is a compromise that benefits neither and potentially hurts both. Her Instagram career is certainly doing better, but she was once an extremely promising MMA prospect. Or was she? It's strangely difficult to tell how good Paige VanZant actually was in her prime. Everyone she ever beat in the UFC is no longer in the UFC. But most of the people that beat her are really good fighters. Out of her 5 losses, 4 of those opponents are currently ranked fighters. And she mainly fought at strawweight, which is one of the most stacked divisions in the promotion. She did very well against opponents that were ultimately not UFC material and got dominated by some of the best fighters in the world. All we know is that she's somewhere in between. And we also have to ask whether she can make the adjustments and become a world-class fighter, or whether we've already seen the best she has to offer. Her style has obvious flaws, which can be easily improved, but they're actually so obvious that I'm wondering why hasn't she fixed them already? If she hasn't fixed this obvious singular problem by now, then I almost suspect she may have already tried and simply can't do it. But I have no idea why that would be. Personally, I really hope she reinvents herself and comes back to MMA. She was an immensely exciting fighter, and I truly believe she has more potential than she's shown. She's still young, and she has a personality and energy that we love to see in the sport. I am having so much fun chatting with you all and sharing sexy content with my sexy fans, heart. I won't go into detail what all goes on, but if you're curious, click that link in my bio and find out for yourself. XOXOXO. I would show you the post this is under, but it's actually too inappropriate for this channel. What happened to Paige VanZant? What has she become?